Hey everyone, it's Elo. Today's video is going to be really important and meaningful to me. I'm going to talk about some personal topics, some hard topics, but all with the intention of helping, which is my favorite thing to do, I think, in this life. So the reason why I've titled this video the way that I did is because I think that this information is most valuable to those who feel similarly to the way that I've felt for a very long time in my life. I have often been someone who feels downtrodden and like the world is kind of against me. And that has shaped a lot of where I have or have not come at this point in my life. So the only other things I want to say before I really dive in are that I think this will be worth listening to if you can relate. And I might take a moment to reach a point that makes sense, but I do have some important points to make if you're willing to just ride along with me. And I might have a few more pauses than usual. As some of you know, I never write scripts for any of my videos, but I always think about them ahead of time enough to get through. And this one especially, I want to be sure that I'm saying what I mean. So I apologize if I take a moment to construct a thought once in a while, but that is human after all. And I'm also going to try to maybe share any applicable evidence of what I might be talking about. So maybe a picture that I'll pop in on top of the video. I guarantee that it will be hard for me to include those because I know roughly what I want to talk about, and it definitely reflects on periods of my life that I don't necessarily like sharing. So I just appreciate your kindness with those things if and when I interject them. So, I for a long time have considered myself to be an atheist, which in the deep south where I live is less common, but also highly frowned upon by many because it's a very, very religious sector of the world in its own right. I live in what's called the Bible Belt of America, where most people are some form of Christian, believing in the Judeo-Christian God and Jesus Christ, as it were. I was raised as a devout Catholic, and I know that many comedians make jokes about the fact that all of the atheists in the room were once Catholics. And I can't say that I'm not a valid part of that joke, because that is quite literally my story. I went to Mass on Sundays. I was baptized as a newborn. I completed my holy sacraments, which, for those of you who may not know, include baptism, your first Holy Communion, your confirmation. Marriage is one that I have not completed, but I don't consider myself on that path anymore. So technically there are sacraments that I did not complete, but all of the ones that were age appropriate I did do, just like everyone else I knew. I was heavily bullied, as some of you may know, in middle school, and everyone's favorite time. And in the 8th grade, I transferred to a small private Catholic school. And when I say small, I mean really, really small. There were, I think, 24 of us in our graduating class. Each grade only had one class of roughly 20 to 25 kids, and the entire school was in one hallway. The building only had one hallway, and we didn't have a cafeteria or a gymnasium or anything like that, so we made do with what we had, and it was very humbling, especially because I definitely grew up in what I would say was the middle class or upper middle class. We definitely weren't rich by any means, and we ended up moving due to financial issues surrounding September 11th and the subsequent financial crashes that happened in America. So it wasn't all good, but one good thing was definitely that school for me. The children there were much more accepting, and I had a really great year. I'll always look back on that time with fondness, but I think what I didn't realize at the time was that it also very much strengthened my relationship to Catholicism. And I didn't necessarily question a lot of what was going on at that point, because I was happy and because I think I was just too young to be critically thinking about those issues at that point. I was definitely more concerned with our little dramas and adventures in the woods, and just making sure that Sister and Marie had no reason to smack me with a ruler. So, that being said, I fell further into the religion than probably even any of my family members were at the time, although both of my parents were also raised as devout Catholics, and my mother actually attended a strict Catholic school from the time that she entered school until she graduated in high school. So this was truly a very intense and heavily steeped in my past part of me. And what I've realized after losing all of that faith and belonging, which happens to many of us, but also maybe you did not grow up with religion, and that's how you have found yourself as a self-proclaimed atheist. Maybe you believe more in science, or maybe you term yourself agnostic. And all of that is fine, because we're all kind of in the same boat here. And for those of you who weren't looking for a religious discussion and you came because you feel those feelings of despair and hopelessness, don't worry, because this is all coming back around, and it will include each of us as time moves on. I really appreciate your patience, because this is very important to me. So my point in mentioning all of this religious background is to say that in losing that, I found a new identity in being a non-believer. I guess when you're a teenager and you're figuring everything out and starting to have your own independent thoughts, you're dealing with other people also coming of age and expressing all of their frustrations and happinesses in the way that they do. You're learning more independently of your family and the people who have shepherded you up until that point. So this new sort of freedom of thought leaves a lot of room for you to choose how you want to think and how you want to conduct your life. You start to have a sense that you're your own person, and that your family or those who have been major influences on your life don't necessarily have any bearing on your life if you don't want them to. And making the decision to not let religion have a bearing on your life is just as difficult as a human. Just because it's more of a concept and a ritual doesn't mean that it's any less crucial to who you are, up until that point anyhow. So as I was saying, I started sort of forming a new personal identity, which included the fact that I considered myself to be an atheist, which no one else in my immediate or extended family does. Of course, it didn't help that just at the crest and height of my teenage happiness, we moved to this area in a different state, but I'm still in the Bible Belt where we all kind of moved to with the recession and 9/11 and all of that. So it was a very bold and difficult decision to sort of announce to the world that I didn't believe in any God and that I had no creator and that I was a woman of science and evidence. And I think that became almost my new dogma, was, well, I don't believe in that, so who are you to tell me anything? It wasn't until years later, really only recently, maybe within the past couple of years, and for those of you who don't know, I'm now 28. So this was 15 years ago, maybe more, that this even really started for me, this concept of losing my religion, as it were. And it's really only been in the past couple of years that I realized that I'm missing something. And don't worry, this is not going to be a talk back into Christianity, because I have not rejoined the faith or anything. I'm just saying that I missed the rituals. I missed the traditions of things that really you can do without religion. Christmas, Easter, I still celebrated, but it felt very hollow in the sense that historically these things like Christmas, that's not even a Christian holiday, and I know that, but I was raised to where it was supposed to be very meaningful, and Easter was supposed to have been this joyous time where this miracle of a man rose from the dead and created a life for us, essentially. A time where I'm supposed to be reverent and thankful. I didn't really miss that because I've always been a bit of a stubborn firecracker, and I don't like bowing down to anyone. I haven't since I was young. That's not to say I'm a pushy person. I'm actually quite shy and reserved, and I often don't speak up when I should. But at the same time, I put my foot down when I'm told to bow to someone else. I think no one really deserves that, and I think that my decisions to believe in or revere or admire someone will be based on my own feelings that I've cultivated over time with reason. So part of me was always sort of primed to reject the idea of owing my life, owing my happiness, owing my existence to some higher being who could judge me and send me to hell to burn for the rest of eternity because I made a mistake or indulged in a human pleasure that is deemed unacceptable by someone who's not human. That's very paradoxical to me, the whole concept that someone can be all just and also judgmental, all fair, but also to condemn. These things presented a problem to me and still do. So that is part of the reason why I elect not to involve myself or follow any sort of organized religion, especially in the Christian sector. I've had enough of my own traumas in my personal life and other issues stemming from those spaces. However, it's become very clear to me that humans are incredibly more powerful when they have something like that they believe in. And that's what I was missing, was something to believe in. And I've been struggling for a couple years now to find that in my own right. And I thought that I could find it in striving for my own dreams in life and making success in the way that I see fit, living my life fully but under my own rules. And that's a really complicated task. It's not easy to be your own soundboard for everything and to create your own set of morals and rules and values and what you think means having a worthwhile life. And for many of those years, without the religion, but with the atheist views and just lacking any sort of support system, which is really what those religious type institutions provide, is a beautiful, unwavering, strong support system. So I understand why people find so much comfort in religion, in the thought of God, in the thought of being redeemed, being forgiven. Life is hard, and there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of things that we can't control that hurt. Death, loss, grief, anger. Simply managing our emotions can be frustrating and overwhelming. And I had a very hard time of these things on my own. I think that was part of what has helped me now realize that, yes, the religion was helpful, but what I was gaining from it was not agreement with the Bible or the concept of heaven, hell, purgatory, or the relief of feeling like someone was looking out for me, which is another thing I see people love to do, is believe that they have angels, spirits, a God who intervenes, not a watchmaker God who just created the earth and let it do its thing and will return at the right point, but someone who you can pray to and literally bring into your life, your moment, and benefit from due to your devotion, I guess. I'm not knocking anyone. I truly want everyone to be happy and exist however makes them happy. I do not hate Christians or Jews or Muslims or anyone. I think people should do the best they can to live a good and happy and peaceful and joyous life. And if they find that through one of those things, then I don't fault them for that, even if I disagree. That being said, the amount of pain that I felt from the time really of middle school onward has been significant, and I have dealt with self-harm, suicide attempts, therapy, depression, full body anxiety that literally cripples my ability to function. Especially as someone on the autism spectrum, I've had immense amounts of difficulty with things that should seemingly be joyous in life, opportunities and just beauty that I have been unable to appreciate at all. And if you've patiently waited through the religious portion, here we are. So hopelessness and feeling just so low, and like life is always raining on you. I used to constantly describe myself as someone with terrible luck, someone who things just didn't go right for. I was very emo for a really long time, and I'm glad that I had that portion of my life because it has introduced me to more beauty than I would have seen without it. Metal music and piercings and just difference. I was able to really appreciate people in their many varieties as an emo, sort of sometimes gothic, punk rock kind of misfit. And I never have ever done any of that or felt any of that intentionally. I genuinely have felt sad, lonely, low, unwanted, unappreciated, like I'm not good at anything or good enough for anyone. I've felt rejected and honestly just like a loser, a very pathetic loser. And sometimes I try to fight that, and I call it depression, and I call it anxiety, and I say that I'm working against it, and I take a bubble bath, and I try to heal myself somehow. And it never works, at least not in a long, there's no longevity to these little band-aids that I've invented or found to work for me in dealing with just pain. And I know that that sounds very emo in itself, but I think that I have had a pretty hard go of it in some ways. Things could certainly be worse, but is it really ever helpful anyway when people say that? Because sure, things could be worse, but you're still living your life and feeling what you feel, and no one should be comparing what's real to you and what's happening for you to other people's struggles and saying, well, you see, at least you don't have XYZ, at least you're not dealing with, ABC. Okay, sure. That's irrelevant though, because all humans at different points in their life feel suffering, feel sadness, feel the same things that other humans feel, whether they are white, black, brown, Asian, doesn't matter. It does not matter where you're from, how you were raised, or what language you speak. Emotions are universal. We all have the same capacity to feel, whatever that means, however violent and traumatic or easy you take those feelings. We all have the same general capacities. You wouldn't expect an ant to feel the same way that you feel because they don't have the same makeup. They don't have the same size brain, the same body, the same heart that we have. But no matter what your shell looks like, we all do. This is an undeniable fact. And it's something that I often try to think about, especially when I'm looking at people who look very much not like me or sound very much not like me. I sometimes think of those sort of Nat Geo documentaries, and they bring these cameras into these poor areas where there'll be people who usually look nothing like me who are giving a look to the camera that I could never really put myself in the position of, because I'm aware of and used to these kinds of technologies, and I still, even though I have no immediate connection to these people and their expressions and what might be going through their head, I still try to accept and acknowledge the fact that those people feel what I feel too, and that will never change, even if I can't totally put myself in their shoes. And so these thoughts have had at some point led me towards existentialism, which, if you don't know, is a philosophical concept. Nietzsche, if you've heard of him, is a philosopher who was big into this concept, really forwarded it into something that we now know and recognize, and it seemed like a pretty good concept for me at the time, because it was very clear about there being no real creator. I really enjoyed the connection that it brought between me and other people without actually having to connect with anyone. And I also met like-minded people when I did discuss these things and look into these things and take, college philosophy courses, learning about these things, thinking that it might provide some sort of comfort. But truly, it's pretty bleak because nothing really matters in that mindset. It's almost a self-destructive sort of doctrinage, even though I do believe that it has some good qualities. If you are interested, I would highly recommend watching the movie I Heart Huckabees. If you've never seen it before, it has Jason Schwartzman, I forget the girl's name, Naomi Watts, I think, Jude Law, a lot of big names are in the film, and I think it does a really good job of showing how seemingly very random people can be very, very connected through these concepts of existentialism. It is a bit strange, but it needs to be. So if you have more desire to learn about that, I would watch that film first to kind of wet your feet in a non-scary way. Anyhow, that concept, that whole venture into existentialism and atheism and all of that, still left me feeling lost, meaningless, and no more able to enjoy life than I had been before. Things really, this is hard for me to talk about, but things really took an even steeper nosedive for me when my best friend slash soulmate passed away just a few summers ago now. It was very unexpected. And I was not at all prepared for that. I don't think anyone ever will say that they're, truly prepared, unless the person is really old, really sick, and they've kind of had their opportunity to close that chapter mentally somehow. And even then, the grief of just losing someone important to you, someone who is a part of you, will always be difficult for us. But I couldn't have ever seen that coming. I didn't have anyone else really to support me through that, because my relationship with him was very isolated. We didn't often hang out with other people together. We often just hung out us two. And what we had was really special in a way that I've never had with anybody else. So not to dwell on that, but just to say that pain comes unexpectedly, and it really, really can just shock and rock your whole world until you become someone you don't even really recognize, which is kind of where I've been lately. I've had a lot of really dark thoughts and feelings of inadequacy, feelings of immense loneliness. Whatever it is for you. I see people all the time, you all, commenting to me about your own sadnesses, especially like if you've seen my social identity and emotions video. A record number of people either commented or privately messaged me on that film relating to the bullying and the hardships that I chose to discuss in that video. So if you have watched that video, you also know that I a little over a year ago I did finally cut off communication with my immediate family for good reasons. And I've been, since then, working on building up the self-esteem and confidence that I've really lacked for a very long time in my life. Since I became conscious, essentially, of other people's perception of me. So yeah, I've been bullied into not wanting to exist anymore, and I've tried, and as a result, and I've been in the hospital, and I've also had times where I'm incredibly happy, and I feel like things couldn't get better, and I wonder to myself, why do I feel that way sometimes? What is it about me? What's wrong with me that this keeps happening? For a long time, I thought maybe everyone's right. Maybe I'm just, like an emo kid, and I'll eventually grow out of it. Maybe this is all just some sort of weird phase that I'm dealing with due to hormones or medicines or drugs or whatever else I was going through at the time. I tried to blame a lot of different things, or not really blame, but find reason. Because when you're trying hard to live, it's very discouraging when these overwhelming feelings just suddenly hit you and you don't want to live anymore. And you feel like, man, why am I so emo? Why am I overreacting to this? Why is my body telling me to give up when my mind is telling me that I'm better than this, or that it's okay, or why is my mind telling me that it's not okay? Why am I hurting myself? Why, these things don't just happen and you're not like aware of it. I've always been someone who self-reflects a lot and overanalyzes and thinks about what just happened. So it can be even more confusing because you're dealing with trauma or sadness or whatever it is you're dealing with. And then on top of that, you're criticizing yourself for feeling the way that you feel, or for doing the thing that you did, or saying something that you wish you hadn't. And you might just feel like a big steaming turd in your life, and you don't understand why you can't make it better. I don't know about you, but that's how I've been feeling for years. And so, kind of coming back around a little bit, I really started thinking about this concept of religion and Christianity, and I'm exposed to it all the time here where I live, but I also listen to a lot of music, and people like Chance the Rapper or Under Oath or whomever it is that shouts out God, thanks God for their success. Especially Chance lately. If you haven't listened to him, don't know who he is a rap artist, an American rap artist from Chicago. Is he from Chicago? I think he's from Chicago. Who has a very, very strong relationship with God. He mentions many times in his lyrics how he doesn't have to think these things. He doesn't have to sit down and really write his raps. It's almost like he's been divinely touched and he and God are making music together. That's kind of his perspective, from what I can gather. He says, this is what it sounds like when God splits an atom with me. So he has a lot of that kind of support coming from God in his songs, and then he also has a lot of praise. He has some very gospel-like features as well, and singing those in my kitchen while I'm cooking dinner, and then realizing what I'm singing and wondering, how can I sing this? How can I feel emotionally attached to singing this when I don't believe in any of this? Like, it made me think back to being in chorus in high school and performing with these all-state and all-district choirs and these, elite singers, and we would be just giving all this emotion and raw power to these God-worshipping songs. And I didn't really think twice about it. But now, being older and feeling so disconnected from that, it got me thinking, what is this? What is this phenomenon? Why is it that people are there's so much exaltation and just power from these people who are worshiping their God that they believe in? They feel bolstered. They feel like they can do anything. Like God has helped them become rich, famous, attractive, is helping them deal with loss, is helping them cope with death. And they believe that someone is there waiting for them to help them into heaven, and where they're going to be rewarded for their belief and for their corresponding actions based on those beliefs. And for as much as I don't want to be a Christian, that is something I want. I think the human mind is way more powerful than we give it credit for. You hear these stories about people existing on nearly nothing for so long. You hear about torture that people have lived through, just even heartbreaking stories, and you think, God, I could never. And you could. That's the crazy thing about it, is your body and your mind are so much more capable and powerful than you know. And it's just a matter of kind of not just unlocking, but harnessing that potential and finding a way to use it to be somebody, to accomplish something, to support yourself in your journey, instead of feeling down and feeling like you're a loser or like you're not good enough. And so I've been thinking a lot about, how am I supposed to, or how can I extract that power without believing in God? And I thought about becoming religious again for my own benefit, which is a thought that still scares the daylights out of me, because the way I was raised, that would be a huge and God would know that I was profiting off of him, essentially, for my own gain without truly believing. And the whole thing is that God is supposed to be able to tell in your heart, whether or not you mean it. So when you apologize, it only really works if you really, really mean it. It's kind of like, don't tell the wish after you blow out the birthday candles, or it's not going to come true. It's that same sort of feeling. So even after all these years, I was too scared, and also didn't want to be a hypocrite in that way of, believing that someone was looking out for me so that I could move forward. Believing that things were going to be okay so that I didn't feel guilt or suffering. And I just couldn't bring myself to be a faux Christian. So I was still looking and still looking and still thinking, how can I be spiritual? And by spiritual, I don't mean believing in God, spirits, ghosts, anything like that. I mean, how can I have that power of calmness of mind, belief in oneself, and genuine respect for my life without having to believe in God. I thought to myself that this would be the answer, that my family has, in my mind, failed me in the sense that they're not very supportive. I've realized I can't find what I'm looking for in them. When I was younger, I tried to put all that pressure on my partner, whoever that was at the time. Okay, well, if this guy wants to, be there for me, then he's going to be there for me for all of this. And I'm going to be fine because this person will constantly have my back and constantly support me and uplift me. And the truth of the matter is that no one can be that for someone else. It's beyond a human's capability to support someone like that all the time, no matter how much they love you, no matter how much they want to see you happy, they hate to see you cry, no matter how aligned with you they are. It's not fair to put that pressure on someone else. They will never be able to live up to that. It doesn't matter who your partner is. Humans are humans. Think back to the fact that everyone else is going to feel what you feel in some way, in their own way, maybe in the same way. Just because you meet someone great, you have the perfect girlfriend or the perfect boyfriend or whatever, doesn't mean they're not going to have their own moments where they need you and where you can't be putting pressure on them. It will ruin your relationship, the potential for you two to truly love each other, whatever that might mean, or truly cohabitate even, in a peaceful way. You just can't do that. Even the most well-meaning person cannot be that selfless and that emotionally available for someone else. So, okay, you can't find it in a partner, guy or girl. You can't find it in your family. You can't find it in your friends because, let's face it, we sometimes expect too much from our friends too, and we get upset that they're not texting back right away or calling at 8 on the dot, or, that how dare they have gone to the movie when you're not feeling your best. Well, that's acceptable as well. You cannot force your friends or expect your friends to always be there for you in the snap of a finger. I don't think that you should, not you, but people, I don't think that people should measure the value of a friendship in that way, because someone may have even better intentions for you, a more well-meaning heart towards you than someone who is there right away. That's not a good measurement, I think. But that's also not the point of this video, so feel free to disagree with that, or any of this really. I'm just hoping that this will be a net positive no matter what part you take away from. So I think maybe I should get to what I'm doing about this. What are you doing about this, Elo? Now, let me tell you. So, I've clearly struggled. I've read the Bible. I've had my time with religion. I've been devout. I've been an atheist. I've laughed in people's faces for believing in God when I was, younger and less well-balanced, I guess, less mature. I have been through, I feel like, all ends, all places on this line, and I just keep going back and forth, and there's never an end to it. It's like, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm joyful, I'm frustrated. Like, it doesn't stop. There's no balance, there's no harmony in my life, or there hasn't been. But recently, I worked up the courage to text my also atheist boyfriend and say to him that I wanted to be more spiritual. And I explained just a little what I meant, just like I did to you. Not that I want to believe in a God, but that I want to feel connected and I want to have something to believe in. And he suggested that maybe I look into Buddhism, which all I really remembered was statues I've seen of the, Big Belly Buddha and other various depictions of Buddha. And also in grade school, I can vaguely remember having to study the Four Noble Truths for a history test or something. But I had rejected Buddhism at the time because I really hated the idea of this caste system, which I was taught in conjunction with Buddhism. This idea that you're born into a class and you cannot leave it, and if you are the scum of the earth class, then people treat you like you're the scum of the earth. That did not sit well with me whatsoever. I'm also open to the thought of reincarnation. It doesn't bother me, but I also have no reason to truly believe in it based on evidence, which, as someone as practical and pragmatic and logical as I am, I like to have reason and evidence. So when he said that, I thought, it couldn't hurt to look again. And I tweeted out, and hopefully I'm going to ask him if it's okay, but Chris Cosmos, thank you for the person who replied to my tweet linked me a 2-hour documentary on YouTube, which I will put in my description box below, the link to. And I watched the whole thing that same day, because about 30 seconds in, I thought, holy crap, I think this is it. I think this might be what helps me. And I'm not in a honeymoon phase with this, I don't think. I have literally been changing my perspective over the past few days. It's really only been, I think, 3 days. So I'm not declaring that I'm a Buddhist or anything, but I watched this long story about where this religion came from. Oh, if you want to call it a religion. I don't even know that I would call it a religion just because of what the word religion means to me. But this story, okay, these values, I was immediately happy with the fact that, number one, this doctrinage supports the idea that there is suffering and pain in life. They don't try to act like life is some great, blessed adventure the whole way. Number two, as they were describing the sort of mythology and centuries-year-old story behind the development of Buddhism, they made it very clear that believing in the For example, at one point in the story, the god of desire shows up to tempt Buddha, or Siddhartha as he was at the time, as he is starting to embark on this quest. In his own life, they've made it clear that believing in those gods is not important. So it gives me the freedom to reject the idea of gods controlling or intervening, and see those more as just kind of human emotions, which I think is what they really represent in the end. On top of that, to learn that Siddhartha was 29 when he first started his quest, and that his whole objective, the whole reason why Buddhism has come about, is because this man wanted to understand how to live life and be at peace with all of the injustice, pain, and suffering that we have to deal with as humans. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly how I feel. And I would never have gone to the extreme lengths and measures that he did, or that it is said that he did, to achieve his enlightenment. But thankfully, I don't have to, because this information is here at my fingertips now. It's on YouTube, it's on the internet, it's in the books that I can read at the library. So I'm not going to give a history lesson, but I do want to discuss the key points that I learned and have continued to be reading about, which have been finally, after all these years of being in immense pain and breaking other people's hearts and breaking my own heart with sadness and inability to function or feel normal or like I belong anywhere, even on this planet, I'm finally feeling peace for the first time in my adult life. And I'm so happy that it actually connects back to the peace, the only bits of peace I can remember feeling as a child. So there's a lot that can be taken in about this. But I think firstly, it was important for me that I registered with the fact that it was said that you need to lose everything to gain anything. And I feel like I've recently done that in breaking away from my immediate family. I do feel like I've lost everything, and maybe you had your own sort of split in your life or event in your life that you can insert here, so to speak, to get on the same page. But losing my family, or whether you got a divorce or broke up with someone or lost a family, someone passed away that was close to you, or you lost your job, or whatever it is, this idea that you have to lose everything to gain anything, it's very comforting because I do feel like I've lost everything, and I used to think that that meant, I don't know what, but just there was so much unrest in that and discomfort in feeling alone. However, it's different when you realize that this is not just a loss, but it's the beginning of you having an opportunity to gain so much, to learn so much. If I hadn't made those steps towards independence and the sort of revoking of the rights of my family to make me feel less than, then I would never have been on this quest in the first place to better myself. I would still be caught up in that drama and that negativity, all of those things that forced me to want to not be in that situation. So that was immediately comforting. There's also this concept that everything you have, you've already lost. And one of the speakers on the documentary film had this beautiful little story talking about a water glass and seeing how beautiful the water glass was, how delicate, and how the light shone through it, and just how wonderful this, beautiful piece of glass that could provide, nourishment to you, a vessel for good things could be. And if you have the glass and you prize it so highly, and then you accidentally break it, they say you think, of course. And that was where I saw myself first in this documentary. I said, that's me. The glass breaks, and I think, of course, why wouldn't that happen to Elo? Yeah, why not? Let's just have everything go wrong for me, because everything always does, so who gives, But then they say, if you've already imagined that this glass is going to break, is going to fall out of your life in one way or another at some point, then you learn to focus and appreciate. Focus on and appreciate the glass as it is while it is. It becomes less painful when the glass does break, when the person does leave your life, when the movie is over, because you've always known that it's going to end at some point. And that is a certainty that we can count on. Impermanence. Nothing is going to last forever. We're all going to maybe get old, or maybe just die. Before we get old, we all experience being ill, being heartbroken, those human emotions that I was talking about with the existentialism. That part I think is right. We do all feel these things. However, if from the get-go you accept that it's not going to last, and that doesn't have to be a glooming shadow either. I'm not saying that you have this, great new relationship and, don't treat them well though, because it's never going to last. They're going to screw you over. That's not what I'm saying. It's never going to last, even if they're your soulmate, the best partner you've ever had. Eventually, even if you go out like The Notebook, the two of you will part ways. How relieving is that, to start seeing the beauty of what is when it is, rather than constantly focusing on what's going to happen, the suffering and the pain that may happen, will happen, let's say, because even if nothing ever happens to your water glass and you have it until you're 100, then you will leave the life, and the water glass and you will part eventually. I just think I've never had that perspective before. I've never been able to focus on this thing in this moment because I'm constantly worried about the bad that will befall that situation. How much power can we find in changing our focus? How much more beautiful is life going to be for us to start appreciating it instead of always seeing the negative or expecting the worst, even if it's not conscious? This is saying, let's be conscious. I'm saying to you, let's be conscious. Let's try to see that beauty in that moment. And as one of the great poets in the documentary says, pay attention. Really pay attention to that moment. It's kind of the almost origins of the concept today that we call mindfulness, which is something that I've learned in therapy, but it never clicked with me. No one ever explained it to me in a way. None of the books that I read, none of the therapists that I spoke with, as much as I loved them, as much as I studied and tried to get better, I just didn't have that moment of, oh, I see. It's already broken. Why care? And I think that can be applied across so many different hardships in life. You know, it's already over. It's already broken. Don't worry. Let's focus on right now. That's gonna happen. That's okay. That's gonna happen. I think it's just incredibly refreshing and relieving to have that perspective, rather than the one where you say, of course that happened to me. So that's point one that I think is worth starting to incorporate into your life, whether or not you ever research more into Buddhism or whatever. I think that can be a huge help in healing, truly, and really changing things for yourself. And of course you have to want that change. Some people enjoy being sad, and that's different, I think. I'm talking mainly for people who feel like they're suffering and don't want to. So, another thing that I think is really cool about this ideology, is not only can you avoid the concept of a god or gods, but also it's 100% irrelevant, which I think is fantastic. Because the point of Buddhism is not to explain how we got here or what's going to happen next. The point is to alleviate the pain and suffering of being alive and being human, learning how to live a compassionate and peaceful life in your own right. So someone at one point, in the film, in the story, asks him about that. what about God? What about the Creator? What about the afterlife? You haven't said anything about what's going to happen when we die. And I love that he is able to come back with the fact that the thing that makes you ask that question is suffering. You are worrying about the pain that you may or may not feel later. You're worrying about the loss of now instead of living now. That's what I want. And I truly believe that, let's say there is a God. If that God is what I would think, even based on what I learned through Christianity, even knowing what I know about other religions I've studied, I think that the way that I'm going to live my life under these thoughts, under these truths, pillars of my being now, would be more than acceptable to that kind of God. The point, I think, would be to enjoy the life and cherish the life that you've been given, and I have never been able to do that. I don't respect myself. I didn't, I guess I should say now. It's really hard to even change those words because I've been saying or thinking those things for so long. But I've never respected myself in that way or seen my life as an opportunity, seen my life as a blessing or something to be glad about. I've always seen it as a burden. I've always predicted that I was going to self-impose my death before I was, X age. I have never been the one to think, wow, this is great. No, I don't feel that way at all. I've never felt that way until now. And it really just comes back to this connection that we have. The earth is here for us. Maybe not for us, but with us. And we do so much to harm it and the creatures on it. And yet it's still here, and we're still here. And we have this connection to this planet, this life. And it's so incredibly improbable that we're even here. Looking at books, cameras, technology, electricity, the trees outside, how brilliantly blue or red or orange and purple a bird can be. What are the odds that any of this would have even happened in the first place? The fact that we even get a chance to do this, I used to see as a burden. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want the heartache. I don't want to have to deal with the pain of, my best friend dying or my family excommunicating me and me them. I don't want to deal with the bullying, the injustices around the planet, the racism in America, the crime and violence that's in even my own neighborhood, all of the horrific things that are out there, these terrible news headlines, internet trolls, people telling you how shitty you are or how you're not pretty, you're not good enough, people digging at each other. All of those things have just bothered me and weighed on me so heavily. especially as someone who's incredibly empathetic, which you may be as well. Being in tune with all of that, really thinking about all of that. I've known so many people over the past few years that have had to restrict social media and other things in their life because they literally can't handle, and I'm one of them, seeing the hurt, whether that's in a political, a financial, whatever sector of life. So it's been amazing to finally have this eye-opening moment where I'm like, that doesn't matter, and why don't I just focus on the fact that I have the chance to talk to all these people, the fact that my body does work, and even if it's not everyone's ideal, I can breathe, I can walk, I can ride my bike. I feel so connected to nature again, and that was one of my favorite things as a child. I was a little witch, not in a mean sense, but I would conjure the wind and watch the birds fly for me, and everything that was happening, I felt like I was in tune with it, and like I was orchestrating life. It like kind of reminds me of Mickey Mouse and Fantasia when he's conducting all of the like magical whatever to happen. And I thought that was something that you only get to experience when you're a child, and I'm so glad that that's not true, because I'm feeling all of that again, and I'm really focusing on making sure I get outside every day, and if I can, touch my feet to the earth, take a walk, take a bike ride, go for a run. I feel nourished by being alive, and even my idea of what I want to feed myself and how I want to treat my body has changed. I feel like I have the opportunity now to do whatever I want. Isn't that great? Like, I'm here and I can try whatever I want to try. That's cool. It's not a burden. And if you want to believe in the reincarnation of that aspect of it, it becomes even easier, because if you've been reincarnated, then you really have lost all of this before. You've lost people, probably. You've had these past lives that have gotten you to where you are now, and being able to appreciate this life might get you somewhere better. That concept might not be right for everyone, so I don't really want to focus on it, because I'm still not even sure how I feel about it. But I just think it's so worth sharing even the seeds of these thoughts. And I hope that if you didn't totally connect with what I was saying, or didn't totally understand, that you keep researching into it. Watch the documentary if you want to. Yes, it's 2 hours long. You don't have to watch it all at once. But if you feel hopeless, if you feel like I've described in your own life, like things are just never going to get better for you, that you're nobody, and that life is just a burden, watch it, read about it, do something to expose yourself to these ideas, because they are truly life-changing and perspective-altering. I have not felt this light and free and happy since I was a little kid and didn't know what hardship was. So I'm excited to see where I go next. I feel empowered. I have everything I want now, and I'm not scared, and that feels really good. So I hope that you can find that too. And if you want to talk any more about it, feel free to write me a comment below, DM me on Twitter, Instagram, email me. I don't care. I'm open. We're all connected. I feel like we belong to each other and we owe this to each other. And I want you to feel how I feel right now, because it's great. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I really had to get this off my chest. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. And I hope you have a great day.